February is a great month for new Junk Journal designs. With colour and romance as inspiration, we can let rip with our creative ideas. It's sometimes hard though to know where to start, especially when buying more stuff is not in the plan. So in this week's video I'm sharing 5 big ideas that I use when creating my own journals. It's a 5-piece framework that you can use and adapt and tailor to your own preferences and to your own craft supplies. And I'm hoping to inspire your junk journaling whilst using what you have and having fun. And if you have a passion for paper like me, if you love junk and art journals, then hit that subscribe button and ring that little notification bell because I've got lots more ideas and videos to come. I call these big ideas because they're relevant to all of my journal making. These are the ideas that I form to then move on to more specific designs to get different results. And I use them when I made this February junk journal, and I'll do a little page turn of this one a little bit later. I hope that by sharing these ideas with you, you can feel more confident and happy about making your next journal. And hey, maybe we even make this a regular date for making a journal each month together. Let me know what you think. My first set of ideas is all about the size and shape of the journal according to its purpose, and I think about the concept of writability. Do I want to be able to write lists in it, writing it a bit like Helen Colebrook uses her journals? Do I want to fill it with words, maybe with a gratitude list? Or do I want it to be a bit more arty, or even containing memorabilia and a story of the week or the month, a bit more like a Johanna Clough? If I want it to be more about lists and writing, then I lean towards this taller, thin shape. And if I want something that's more about doing spreads, then I'm going to lean a bit more to a deeper and wider design because that really helps me put the pages together. I also think about portability. So portability, do I want this journal to be something that I can take round the house with me to get more use out of it, or even out of the house? Or is it something that's just going to sit on a desk, in which case it could be one of those thick books that gets converted? And that also helps me think about ideas on the robustness of the cover. And then finally, on size and shape of the journal, I think about sustainability. I think about, do I want this to last me a month and then move on to another one, maybe because there's a challenge that's running? Or is it something I want to last a number of weeks and months because I want to put into it much more of a story about what's going on in my life and capture that over time? So that's my first idea: writability, portability and sustainability. The second set of ideas that I form are all about the papers that go into the journal. And I ask myself 3 questions to form ideas about the papers that will go in, having looked at what I've got, having looked at my stash. So the first question I ask is, how do I feel about how eclectic this journal is going to be? So if I just give you an example, on one end of the spectrum, I think I've created some colourful, eclectic, slightly different journals. This was one using a Rupert Bear album, and you can see how vibrant it is. It's a little bit different. I really loved making this. You could also look at Kagedfish for examples of journals that are made using glossy magazines, and those are maybe a bit easier to get hold of for making your journals. This one was a little bit eclectic and I was using papers from various books. So yes, ask the question, how eclectic do you want your journal to be? On the other hand, you may decide that you want something that is a bit more traditional. So to choose papers that fit with your ideas, have a think about whether you're actually more interested in those neutral and natural tones. And maybe that's the mood you're in. So forming your ideas about whether you're interested in something that is relaxing and calming as you turn the pages. And an example of a channel where you might find a bit more of this is megjournals, who's been creating some gorgeous journals recently with some beautiful natural supplies, coloured supplies. And finally, I asked myself the question, how coordinated do I want this journal to be? And my February journal has got a little bit of coordination about it. It's not neutral, but it's not vibrant colours. I wanted it to have something about the feel of February with the pink colours. Here I've got a Julia Macmillan little project card. I've got some pretty flowers, but I didn't want twee hearts and cute bears. So I've scattered through this some natural tones, but I have added a little bit of colour, and shortly I'll just do a little bit more of a page turn and talk you through some of the supplies that I've used. So second set of ideas is about the papers that go into it, and if you ask yourself those three questions: how eclectic do I want it to be, how neutral do I want this to feel, how coordinated, you can then pick papers from your stash that go with the ideas that you've formed. The third set of ideas that I work through is to think about the quantity and proportion of your journal that is going to come from the added extras, and by that I mean things that go into pockets, be they folded ones or things that you put on a corner, the quantity of belly bands and extra tip-ins that you want to put in. And the reason I think about this as one of the ideas up front is it does add extra bulk and extra stress onto the spine of the journal. So have a think about what proportion of your journal you want to come from these extras, and maybe think about leaving a bit of space within your journal so that you can add it. Also, at that point, I have a think about whether I want to make use of some of my cute little washi tape. So when you're adding a tip in, so that's an extra page like this with washi tape to hold it in, you can choose cute little colours that go with the rest of the theme. So it's just a good moment in time to have a think about whether you want to make a feature of your washi tape, and do you want to add more interest and pockets and cute little nooks and crannies by pockets, by belly bands and by tip-ins. And with some of my journals, this is just an ongoing process of love and joy of continuing to put extra things into my journal so that I can just enjoy the ongoing creation. The fourth set of ideas that I like to form are all about how I want to decorate the journal. And one of the first things I think about these days is whether I want this journal to be one that can feel the joy of watercolour being splashed on the page, being mixed to create beautiful colours. Are you going to allow yourself to experiment on the page and play with something like this White Nights palette? And when did you last do that and allow yourself that freedom of play? And the reason it's a useful idea to form at this early stage as you're designing your journal is it might influence the choice of papers that you put in. It doesn't mean that you need to put watercolour paper in. You can still put junky paper in, but it might be good if that's thick. So if I just give you a few examples of where I've been using watercolour paint, this journal really did benefit from some good fun. So you can see I've used it to pull out some different colours on some of these pages. I've also used it in the February journal, so the new one. I've used it to get rid of some of that, I don't like, bright white. So I've sploshed it over a white page that was pretty thick cardstock, and that just, to me, is another layer that's adding to the effect that I want. So that's one idea. We'll talk about Ephemera in a minute. I've also added it to a stamp. So this is a stamp. I've added it to the content of the stamp, so a rose, and it is a February journal, so I felt that was a little bit of the romance coming through. But I've also given some sploshy green background there. Just get it on the page, have some fun, see how it works and blend the colours. And then a third way that I've used my paints in this journal is to again stamp with a nice chunky foam La Blanche stamp, and then I went over with a water brush and just added some green, yellow and brown tones. And then I've actually taken a pen and given some definition to some of the leaves and the petals, just having a bit of fun, trying to tone these colours with some of the greens that were on the left hand side of the page. So in terms of ideas, I think about how I'm going to decorate and just allow that to influence the choice of papers and how I set the journal up. And the last set of ideas that I form before I get going on putting together my journal is around the ephemera that I'm going to use. And really this set of ideas is most influenced by what I actually have. I don't have a big stash of ephemera, and I'm not going to go out and spend a lot of money on individual items. So thinking up front really encourages me to make best use of what I've got, or as I mentioned in my video last week, to encourage me to have a play at making my own. And if you're interested, have a look at last week's video where we put together some stamps on scrapbook paper, and we've been painting them in. My suggestion, if you don't have a lot of ephemera, is try making your own. Try making some really easy things. So things that I've been putting together are tags with painted papers. Green is an incredibly useful colour, and you can add other things on top very easily. So these are pieces of map paper that I have added to some junky card, and they'll get used in a number of journals. I make umpteen of these little project life cards, either in scrapbook paper or map paper or line paper, and I can't tell you how enjoyable it is just to sit cutting those out and making a stack of them. And making tags generally is a really pleasant thing to do. I've been stamping this little La Blanche stamp onto some cardstock. I think it's Die Cuts with a View cardstock, and because it's a bit thin and the back is less textured, I've just been sticking some different things on the back. Oh, I've got the Tempest there from a book, I've got maps, and it's just, you know, really enjoyable thing to sit and play doing gluing. So have a think about what you've got and how you can make use of what you already have in your journal. In this you can see I've been adding some of the doodles I've created. I did promise myself that I would have a go at some doodling, and I got a book at Christmas on doodling, so I've been having a go at drawing those and painting them, and I've been adding just extra bits of paper as ephemera in there. And I've created my own style of ephemera by printing and painting, stamping and painting on pages. Index cards, be they big or small, are very cute to use in a journal as ephemera, and I like to round the corners, it just adds a little bit of something. I've been just sticking those Project Life sized cards in. That's a chalked page. This is a beautiful page from a piece of card that had been decorated by Julia McNeil. So I've included that. I hope she doesn't mind that I've cut it down and put it in a different way. I've been stamping the pages with a stamp, and on this one I stamp it and then I don't re-ink, and the shadow and pale of the stamp I think adds something and helps that page have a little bit of something about it. So where I don't have many ephemera, I'm doing a little bit more of the stamping and decorating. Made my own little wacky tag. There's another of those stamps on some brown cardstock, so some more ephemera there. I've been cutting out an old encyclopedia. So have a think what you can do and what you've got, and how that might go with the other ideas around the purpose and the size of the journal, around how eclectic or neutral you want it to be, around how many of those additions and extras of pockets and belly bands you're going to add, and how it fits with other decorations. So those are my 5 ideas for how to put together a journal by thinking up front about the big picture, about your big ideas. I'll just do a quick page turn of this February journal. I hope you enjoy it, and if you have enjoyed this passionate paper talk through about how I put together journals, then hit that subscribe button and ding the notification bell, because I'll be back next week with more, and I'd love to hear more about your journaling and how you're playing with paper. See you next week. Bye.